If you haven't found it yet, keep looking and don't settle.
Yeah, this is Houston. We're copying. Everything is go here.
We shall fight on the beaches and in the streets. We shall never surrender.
I'm in it just to rewrite history, cause I'm in the mood to label us the leaders of the new school. This ain't for the radio, can't find this on YouTube. This the type of killing that these critics ain't used to.
You're a group of happy rebels. You've said no to the rules of the game or the regulations of the day. You've said no to the conventional wisdom. You're all originals.
In this day and age, I got time for innovation, time to be creative, time to make the way so my time.
Welcome to the 90 Proof Wisdom Podcast, where we dream big and challenge the conventional wisdom. This podcast is about distilling the lessons we've learned in life and business, turning them into tools that will help you to succeed personally and professionally. We're about standing firm, running toward the battle, building communities, and changing the game and staking our claim. Today, we're just going to go through a little bit of my history, where I've failed and I've won. I've gone from bankruptcy twice to millionaire 3 times. Not all to be proud of in there, but there's a lot to be proud of. Not quitting, how you get through it, how do you find people that trust you, how do you find your bankers, how do you start up with nothing? And I just thought I'd recap kind of where I've been through and how we've got from then to now, really. So I look forward to having you tune in today. Hopefully hit on some emotional pieces and some life-changing events for me, and really happy and proud of some of it and kind of embarrassed of others, but nothing to be embarrassed about as long as we learn something, right? Starting off, I'll kind of go back into high school ages. My parents got divorced early on. I was just a young 16 years old. My kids, I was the oldest of family of, here I am counting 5, right? So I have a younger sister named Celine. I have another sister named Delina, Sarah, and Cassie. So I'm the only boy in a family of 4 girls and 5 kids. So anyway, it was kind of hard at that point. My dad moved off to California. My mom was left. She worked her butt off. My mom was a really hard worker, never quit, never gave up. Even in gas stations, she'd take the toilet paper, so she was never giving up, even trying to supply food or toilet paper for our family. So she was a hardcore, hardworking lady, and I really respect her. She still is today. If we didn't make her stay home and just enjoy being 76 years old, she'd still be doing this. So I feel blessed that we're able to let her stay home and be retired. But it definitely comes from her. So at an early age, I got a job. My first job was Hardee's restaurant, fast food restaurant, making $3.10 an hour, which was better than $2.10 an hour, but it was still not enough to save up for my Remington rifle that I wanted to do. That took me a full summer for $700 at part-time wages to save up for that. And that kind of was my whole aspirations for working at Hardee's, right? And then from there, I went over to Lagoon, and I worked in the landscaping department. Lagoon's a local amusement park here in Farmington, Utah. It's a lot of fun. It's comparable to, say, Six Flags, much smaller scale. Next step was, I thought, you know what, as we were going through high school was a breeze for me. I didn't have to study too hard. Still graduated with honors, and wasn't a hard deal, really, right? But I wasn't great at it. I didn't know how to study. It just wasn't hard enough to really keep me interested. The end of high school, my senior year, I took my EMT class at DATC, and I thought I wanted to be a firefighter when I got out of high school, which would be great. I mean, I was excited about the idea and the prospects. Went and did a couple little things to test it and see. There was a job opening at South Davis Fire for part-time firefighters. This is before Davis Metro, and got in, was there about 3 weeks as probationary, got my first paycheck. It was $6.13, and in the meantime, I'd gotten a freight job at UW Freightways, which is now Old Dominion, and it was paying $7.50, so I was going to have to take $1.40 an hour cut, which didn't quite cut the mustard for me to try to figure out what life was. And then it evolved into the next step where I thought Utah was too boring, moved to New York for a few months, and that was fucking crazy. You know, now, coming out of Centerville, Utah, and New York City, they aren't quite related. So I lived with my aunt and uncle out there, and my friend's dad called me, my friend Ben Cheney, he's called up and said, hey, my dad has some work for us if you want to go to Denver. working on a Smith in commercial construction. And growing up, my dad was a stockbroker, and so I was really poo-pooed on the idea of blue-collar work. I thought, man, yuck, I can't even imagine trying to do stuff outside and get sweaty and use your hands. That would be awful. Well, needless to say, my options have dimmed. My family's divorced, not mine, but my mom and dad had gotten divorced, and my dad had moved to California, and my mom didn't have much, and college was expensive. So I said, okay, yeah, I'll go to work with you guys at Smith's, it was in Albertsons in Denver. And he was a freaking hard worker, that guy. I did a shift with him. It was 72 hours long. I mean, this guy was a diehard. It was trying to do a store turnover, falls asleep underneath the cash register in the Albertsons. I'm like, where the frick's he at? He's out, and we got in 3 car accidents driving home from work. Because he'd fall asleep at a stop sign, and then he'd just rear end the car in front of us. So I sat there on pins and needles trying to keep my old boss awake. And anyway, everybody quit and left. My friend even quit, left me with his dad, which was awkward. But I felt really bad quitting him, so I was just working with Dan Cheney at Cheney Brothers and for a few months while people settled in and figured out if they could come back to work for Danny or not. Well, I decided that blue-collar stuff wasn't what I wanted to do, so I decided to come back to college at the University of Utah and had to figure out a way to pay for it. So I was back to the freight company at UW and going to school when one of my neighbors asked me if I could build them a wooden shed. And this starts my business ventures, right? So that's kind of a quick cover-up of my previous years, and this one's going to go into where my first taste of business was. And I started a company. Well, my neighbor asked me to build him a shed, so I went and built him a shed. And as we were doing this, I was going back and forth to Tough Shed and kind of getting the ideas of Tough Shed, which at the time only had 3 locations. It was like Salt Lake City, Denver, and something else. So anyway, I went out to go to Tough Shed, kind of copied the ideas of what they had on how they built their sheds. And the one thing I noticed at their display lot was all their wooden doors on the inside of their sheds had a major bow, which stands inherently accurate. It's going to happen because 2x4 is not fastened to a top or a bottom plate are going to have a tendency to tweak, and even those that are have a tendency to tweak anyway. So the guy I was working with and myself thought it would be a really good idea to weld up a metal frame to put on the inside of the sheds there. And that happened to be my first run at creativity and patent runs and all that stuff. So that was my first patent attempt there is at 18 years old was my metal frame on the inside of the storage sheds that you see. Well, we were building a few sheds. I built that one, and then all the way down the street, my neighbor's like, will you build me a shed, and will you build me a shed? So I started putting this thing together, and I'm like, man, I can make okay money. I don't have to haul freight, and I can still pay for school. And we signed up for the Utah State Fair. It happens in September at the fairgrounds, and we went down, and I brought a shed, and I thought I'd sell some sheds at the state fairgrounds. Well, worked out awesome. I did $60,000 in the first 10 days of the state fair, and we required 50% down. And then 50% when we were done. Well, Deseret First Credit Union, where I'd banked, saw my bank account go from like $3 to $30,000, and they're like, what the frick are you doing? Of course, as a 19-year-old, 18-year-old kid, I felt like I was freaking rich. Like, I don't need to work. I don't need college. I don't need nothing. I'm rich. There's a lot of lessons there. One, it's not your money. It's unpaid liabilities or workload liabilities. Some of the stuff we don't know when we're 18 years old. We just feel like we're loaded. And not only that, we're going to get more loaded as soon as the second half of this stuff comes in. So started manufacturing in my mom's driveway some of these sheds that we were selling, and got a ticket for manufacturing in a residential in Centerville City, Utah. So that was interesting. And then I'm putting in a shed, and then I got a ticket for contracting without a license. I didn't know you needed a contractor's license. So here's the issues that we have, right? Is I don't know how to start a business. I don't know what's needed as far as licensings are concerned. Who would have thought you needed a general contractor's license or a framing contractor's license to build a storage shed, right? So I think some of the problems when we go into business is we think we want to do business, but the biggest problem that the United States has, or business economic development groups in the states or local cities, there isn't a checkoff box, one by one step through process of, hey, I want to go into business. At least there isn't a clear set. There might be one. I shouldn't say there isn't one. There may be, but it's not easily accessible or readily known to be accessible. So you wander into these businesses not knowing what's required of you and what's not required of you. And I think that's part of the biggest problem of starting a business is, what do I need? Wow, that looks overwhelming. I want to do it, but I don't know how to start. I don't know where I'm going to get the money, right? And I don't know the steps, and there's no place that can really walk you through it without costing all the money you planned on using to start up anyway. So it's kind of a tough deal. At least that's how it feels. But hopefully with this thing, we can kind of walk you through how to do it and not worry about how much it's going to cost, in the sense that it does cost money, but you don't need someone all the time. There is stuff you can do, and all it takes is just a don't quit attitude, and hey, we got to get down to business and take care of it. So when I got this, you can imagine getting the winds, knocked right out of your sails, because you're supposed to be delivering these sheds, and now you have a ticket without a contractor's license. So of course I went down to the state and I fumbled my way through my contractor's license and made up all sorts of shit to just get my qualified time in my license. Cause back then it was paper, not computer. They couldn't verify nothing. And so I said I had a couple of years of framing experience, and there we go. I had a license. But in the meantime, we were buying a whole bunch of wood from Home Depot, and ran into a buyer down there. His name was Rick Vasquez at the time. And they were doing like handy home builder sheds that the faces were just hanging on in the store. And I thought, yeah, he goes, why don't you build our sheds? And I thought, well, that would be cool. And I grew up in Centerville. Like I said, I'm pretty naive. The only Home Depot I ever knew of was on 21st South and 3rd West. So I thought it was like a local store that just happened to be a big box. Well, when I got their paperwork, I was like, who the hell do these guys think they are? There's a big old freaking banker's box of papers I need to fill out with instructions on delivery and insurances and licensing and packaging and instructions. Like, can be overwhelming. So I ended up signing Home Depot as a vendor in my mom's living room. Quite an interesting feat. He came over and helped me finish up the paperwork, and we got submitted. And then all of a sudden they'd asked me to deliver displays, and they wanted these wall displays on our storage buildings. And they loved the big reason why was our steel frame. So the steel frame was the icing on the cake. I happened to pitch it to him, and he thought that was it. But when he talked to me about these displays on the wall, I said, man, I have no money. I'm working at my mom's house, and I can't afford to put a bunch of wall displays inside Home Depots. I don't have that kind of capital. So I was able to work out a deal with the Home Depot where we decided we'd drop the full built displays in the parking lots of Home Depot stores. So when you go to a Home Depot store and you see these gardens, the lawn and garden displays of sheds sitting in the parking lot, those come out of necessities. It wasn't because we wanted you to see a whole shed. It's simply because I had no freaking money to hang a shed on the wall. So I was able to talk Rick into buying displays. And at the time, Bill Hamlin was the merchandising vice president, I believe, out of the Fullerton office in California. So with his approval, we were able to get Home Depot to cover the West with the displays in full, like full-size displays, which with that made it so they would give me a purchase order to buy the displays, which then enabled me to deliver the displays whole, and I didn't have to cash flow it. So there's always a good solution. You just have to be really good at sailing it. So in that particular problem, there's three here that we want to cover. One, I didn't have a license to do business, so went down to the local city and I got a business license. That's one thing you're going to have to put in place. The next one is your sales tax license, your employment number, whether you use your social security number or your corporate ID. So these are quick and easy to do. You're going to be all in all maybe $100 between those. You're going to have business insurance, which typically is a smaller policy in that if you're starting out, $300,000 to $500,000. I'm a big fan of overinsuring. I'd rather be overinsured than underinsured. So buy as much insurance as you can afford, and don't be stupid. Just buy as much as you can afford, so that way you, when, not if, something happens, you're protected. Just like driving a car, there is something that's going to happen. Just don't be underinsured when that happens. Just insure as much as you can. The next thing is getting your product out to market. Ours started with the idea of a shed. We worked inside the business sales model, which is the most powerful sales model there is, word of mouth, right? So word of mouth, hands down, the very best model of selling products. So whether it be to your friends, whether it be to your family, whether it be to your friend's family, the confidence, the trust, the awareness, everything is through friends or customers, which we'll call friends as well. So leaving a good taste in the customer's mouth, in a sense, becomes business friends, which then will tell their friends, and they're feeling confident enough to share your message or share your product with those other friends. So why is the customer always right? Why is it better to keep the rear view small and the windshield big? If you have problems and you have to credit back customers to a reasonable amount, it's because they have the ability to grow your business one-on-one. Referrals are it. They are the answer to the best growth, not the fastest, but the best. The friction components drop, all aspects of businesses, the whys, the why does it take so long, or do I trust this company? Are they going to really deliver? Do they keep their schedule? Why are they expensive, or why are they long far out, or why are they cheap, and why are they quick? Your friend or their previous customers can explain that and bring a level of comfort to that customer that you can't, regardless of how much you spend on marketing. So keep that in mind, not to get off too much of a tangent, but the marketing there on my side was word of mouth down my street, State Fair Park, right? And then using friends and referrals that I'd built sheds for building confidence for the 50% deposit, right? And we did the deposit game in our business because, one, it was necessity, right? I didn't have the money to go out and build people's sheds, front the lumber, front the material, front everything to get it delivered. So I just decided I'm going to put half down, which we'll call in this scenario consumer-based financing, right? Which would mean rather than credit card financing or banker financing or venture capital financing or private equity financing, this is also the best form of financing. Customer-based financing has a pretty darn good interest rate. It's called positive interest, not negative interest. The money you get in a consumer-based deposit goes into your account interest-bearing rather than you using a credit account that cost you interest. So it's a complete reversed analogy. It's double win, right? You're not paying high interest on a credit card. Let's call it 18.9% to 25.9%. That's 2% a month, guys. So you do $10,000 a year or $10,000 on a month, you're paying a couple $100. Well, that adds up. This is all net margin, net profits. What you're looking for at the end of the day, interest only comes out of your net margin, period. No matter how you want to slice it, sure, it's a write-off, sure it is. But at the end of the day, whatever you don't have to pay in interest and whatever you can earn in interest will pile into net margin. And net margin means the money you take home to you, your friends, and your family. That is your money. So anytime you make decisions that cost you net margin, like interest, that is money out of your net profit pocket. It doesn't, a really lame terminology that you hear a lot is, well, it's a write-off. Bullshit. Everything can be. Write-offs matter. But if you're brand new at this game to where you're thinking that you should go buy a new truck and you want to present yourself to be the coolest and the best, dumb. New trucks don't matter. Write-offs don't matter. You are brand freaking new. You can be, look at like the Treehouse Master, right? I love that guy. He's a lot of fun. The most loving person you could really get to know, to me. I don't think you'd care if this guy that can knock out a treehouse and make the most wonderful creation on the planet out of a tree would show up in a piece of shit car. Don't care. Love his treehouse. Don't care about his car. Your car does not stay at your customer's house. Bullshit that they think they can trust you more because you have a new car. This is just you trying to wave your junk around, trying to be how cool you are, right? Guilty. First thing I did, went from a 1985 Chevy, got $30,000 down. Guess what I did? When about a 1995, yep, so it was 94, late 94, about a 1995 Dodge Ram diesel, paid a $3,500 adjusted markup value just so I could be that cool guy and trusted at 18 years old with a Dodge Ram Cummins that thought I was just rich because I had a little bit of money in down. Mistake number one, right? That was my big mistake. My 85 Chevy worked great, actually, and it was fun and probably more, if you look back at it, probably more reflective of a startup shed company, of a kid trying to work hard instead of rolling into this deal with a brand spanking new pickup that were so rare they're paying an adjusted market value at this year, right? And people kind of get turned off. They're like, the heck is this guy charging me? There's a happy medium here, right? So when you put these things together, keep in mind, you can go down to your local city, state, county government office, find out your licenses, find out the insurance requirements for those licenses, find out a marketing plan, which is, again, the cheapest form is word of mouth. Get it through your friends, families, and fools and their friends' families. Do that and then put together a little marketing package that may look as simple as a state fair, a county fair, a local neighborhood meet and greet or whatever. Door to door is powerful. I mean, as bad as it sounds, it is. It does. It works. As you push your message, right? Again, the it doesn't really matter, and we're going to spend more time on the it's later, but I wanted to kind of walk into what really I wanted to talk about, which is the road to recovery, where these mistakes that you make early on, mistake number one is my pickup, and that's kind of where I wanted to start. And from here, I'm going to condense these stories up pretty quick. Well, I got into this pickup, and yeah, the state fair was great, and we did $60,000 worth of sheds, and yeah, there was some decent margin from August to December. But what I failed to figure out was the pipeline. And when I say the pipeline, it's the funnel that's feeding the next level of work. Well, as you guys can see, the conundrum comes when December hits and you're done with your work. There's no freaking fair. There's no plan. I'm not in the yellow pages yet, which, by the way, that dates that a little bit. It's not as easy as getting your number up on Google anymore. Back then, you waited the year out until the yellow pages printed again. So there was this huge problem, right? Here I sit with a rented shop because I can't manufacture in a storage shed, or excuse me, in my mom's garage. And I have a brand new pickup truck and an employee or two. So here we sit with overhead and no income, right? Problem. Well, luckily enough, I felt the pressure then, but then we started to get some work. Home Depot reached out. We moved on. But I had a common theme of doing that over and over and over, right? Just feeling like it was going to be okay, living my life in this world of stress. Well, it was to the point where I was like 23 years old, we'd open another office in Las Vegas and one in in Phoenix, Arizona. And didn't want to do it. I didn't date. I didn't have any fun. I'm like, I think I'm going to franchise. Well, here we go again. I don't know anything about franchise law. I thought I could just sell an operation and call it a franchise without having to follow these rules. And some dude come in from Ogden, Mark F. Burton. That guy came in, said he was going to invest several $1 million into Frontier Shed Company. Big old fancy bragger about what he gives to his church. I'm from Centerville, over trusting, over caring, and this guy flat out me, right? So he comes in, he drops a little $20,000 check as an investment. Before you know it, in under 90 days, he'd liquidated all the assets out of our Arizona operation. And then he came in and was able to collect all the money that Home Depot owed me, which was several $1 million, right? And he collected it. Well, I was going to Zion's Bank. I was a private bank there, and so was he. He had a checking account set up as the old Frontier Shed. Well, I went to my attorney. His name was George Dominion Bountiful, and he's like, hey, look, we ought to do this. He goes, let's sue this sumbitch. This will be great. We're going to sue him for suffering. It would have been this easy, guys. Go to the bank. That bank's fraudulent. They take the money back and give it to me. But my attorney convinced me that we could sue for damages and make way more money than what that check was. Granted, see, I'd lost a lot of the stuff in my Phoenix operation and there was some cost there. And I was thinking of that spilled milk rather than, hey, just get the money that's out there and forget the rest and keep my rear view small and my windshield big and let's just keep moving on. Which, by the way, if I'd have done, no problem. No problem. But I took the advice of greedy attorneys, which I have a love-hate relationship with my attorney, right? My attorney's a great guy. Hate to call him. Damn expensive. No, it's not always in a negative way. You got to prepare yourself in documents as things get bigger. But this feeling of, hey, we need to sue for suffering. There was a problem here. You know what the problem was? In order to sue for suffering, what do we have to do? Oh yeah, probably suffer. Forgot that part. So here we sit, broke. I have an operation in West Bountiful that we try to bail out for 15 months. My attorney's bills are tens of thousands of dollars, taking every ounce of money I have. And we get 15 months down the road and his bill comes in again. And he says, hey man, I gotta get paid again. I'm like, dude, like I have no more money. I'm bleeding out. I'm trying to pay all these Phoenix bills that are past due. What do you want me to do? He's like, well, I can't keep representing you unless I get paid. So here we sit. Bad choices with attorneys. Not that he was a bad guy. He's doing his job. Remember, they're not trying to be guilty. That's just what they are. Just kind of like a cancer doctor, right? A guy that sells chemo. The only thing we sell on with chemo is hope. Hope. A doctor that sells for cancer is hope doctor, right? He's wanting you, as long as you hope and as long as you have money, they're going to sell you hope. Not that he's a bad person. He has hope too. He hopes you have a lot more money so he can keep selling this to you. Hey, look, 97% fatality rates, but there's 3%. We need to swing for that 3%. Well, there's stats for a reason. Same thing with attorneys, right? They're selling hope. And I'm not trying to villainize attorneys, and I'm not trying to villainize cancer doctors, just so you know. But I'm just saying that at our weakest moments, that's what we jump into. We have to always keep ourselves in a personal check where we say, that is rear view shit. I just want it to be a small thing that I can look back on as a lesson learned. And I'm going to stay and focus on my big, huge windshield in my life and let that be the past. I'm just going to take the money that they gave him. I'll rebuild the rest. At least I'll have this money to get me through some of it. Didn't have either, by the way. So I had a broke down shit shop that I had a lease agreement on that I was way short of. And then I had none of the capital that Home Depot had given. And I was too dang greedy, let's be honest, that I wanted to get damages out of this deal to go after that. I wanted to just go through the suffering side, not realizing that that means that you have to suffer. So needless to say, 15 months in, broke. Bankrupt, right? We'd done to the point where, almost 20 million in revenue on an annualized there. Crazy at an early age. Very busy, very crazy. Partied like you would not believe. I went to every party. I went to Manhattan for Times Square on New Year's Eve. I did New Orleans. I did Cinco de Mayo in Puerto Peñasco. I had a lot of friends. They all want to fly around with you when everything's going right. Like, we're the perfect friends. But at the same time, lost a shit ton of money and learned a big, huge lesson here. I'm super embarrassed, right? I'd gotten a girlfriend. We'd bought a house down in Woods Cross, little teeny starter home. And she was dealing with just a depressed piece of shit, right? So this is where I kind of was to the point, I'm just done with my life. And I'd got up onto the mountain and thought I'd shoot myself. And that didn't pan out. I had a friend intercept it. He saw my truck parked up the road, come down and said, hey, what are you doing? He says, not going to happen. Took my pistol, got in his truck. It was like 2 a.m. in the middle of nowhere. And he drove me home. Went back up the next day, got my pickup and thought, okay, well, hell, if I get caught up on the mountain, I better just go down by the Great Salt Lake, do that there. And same son bitch shows up with his girlfriend. I'm like, man, you guys cover some miles, literally, right? And took my gun away there, and that was it for a while. What was weird is when I got in this truck, and here you are at the bottom of the barrel, right? You've got a pistol in your mouth. You've got everything you feel like's important, like money, which, by the way, doesn't matter, but you feel like it does, is sitting in, you're just at a loss. Like, what am I going to do? Here I am, 22 years old, a whole world in front of me, And I feel like because I don't have a shed business at 22 years old or a business or money, that I'm not worth a damn, which is really dumb because most 22-year-olds are not worth a damn. Let's be honest, right? Or 45-year-olds. It doesn't even matter. But we put some value here that is all external value and pressure. So we just have to keep that in check. Well, we get in there in his truck, a song, Only God Knows Why by Kid Rock. Here I am on antidepressants. This song comes on. I throw the fucking pills out the window. And by the way, never been depressed since. It was a life-changing moment for me. I thought, well, look, if God wanted me dead, he wouldn't have the same dude in a town my size stop something. And by the way, it's not a guy I really like. This is a guy that always made me feel less. So talk about the worst time to have a guy that makes you feel less. He was a friend of a friend. When I say friend, it's one of those dudes. It's a friend of your friend, right? So fine. Well, to have that dude show up was like just fucking icing on the cake of being down. Like of all the people, it's the douchebag that makes fun of me. Has since high school, right? He had the step side and he had the fancy car and I had a 69 Cutlass 442 with 4 different colors and duct tape seats. Don't care. But I did. And when he found me there, I just felt like of all the people, why does it have to be you? And then on top of that, it was twice. So when I thought, if that's God's trick is to bring me the same dude twice, and then to have this song come on for whatever reason, really rang home to me at that minute. And I've listened to it a lot since and don't know what registered, don't know what hit me. It doesn't feel the same when I hear it. Love Kid Rock, although I'm a Waylon and Hank Williams Jr. guy, but I still love Kid Rock and Juice WRLD and Eminem, you name it, right? We love all those guys, but didn't understand why it resonated, changed some programming, I think, in my head at the time. The whole situation, the circumstance, and the music happened to just flip a switch for me. And I've been thankful for it ever since because I haven't had to sit in a world of depression. But anyway, after that, I decided to go live in my car for a year. I lived in my car hauling RVs around for some transport companies up out of Indiana. Well, actually, the company was out of McDonough, Georgia. My friends all called me a hauler. You know, I didn't make any money, but I had to sleep in my car every night and shower at the Flying J gas stations. Well, I started doing it, and that was got to be the worst fucking deal ever. That first 6 months of sitting with you, with a dude that you can't hardly stand to look at in your mirror is hard. And when you can't afford a cell phone and you have no one else to talk to get away from yourself, that's hard. That's really hard, right? You're like, God damn it, I don't even want to talk to myself. I want to be with myself. I don't have a distraction from my friends or a distraction with my phone that I can keep from being in my own head, right? That's what's great about phones and some things. By the way, this still doesn't work. This is here because it's referencing notes. But what's great about phones is we don't have to focus on the now. So we find ourselves, and you see our kids and everything else, they just don't have to focus on the now. Well, they don't even know how to deal with the now, right? So this is the problem. Well, 6 months. I remember the day when it came back 6 months later. I'm in the car 6 months later. I find myself, I like myself. It was weird. I was fine with living in my car. I was fine with being my only friend at the Flying J gas station. It was totally fine with me. I was happy. It was weird. I went from like, there's no way I'll ever find happiness again because I'm embarrassed. I can't ever go back to my hometown because I'm embarrassed. I can't do a lot of things that only I give a fuck about. All my friends could have gave two shits. They would have much rather seen you come back and go drink with them or go hang out with them or go barbecue with them. But here we think because we failed at something, because we tried, which is something I forgot to remind myself, the reason I failed is because I tried, right? Which most people at that age don't. So there's some credit here, right? At 22 or 32 or 42 or 52, to be fair, most people don't try. Right? So it's easy for the people sitting in the armchair, like the old, adage, armchair quarterback, for them to judge triers. Well, now, as I've gotten older, I don't care. Judge. And that's what I learned in the car. I decided at that point, at 6 months, when I really enjoyed myself, being with myself, I wanted to do it for 1 solid year. 1 solid year. So did it for that full year. One of my friends calls me and says, hey, my brother's looking for a superintendent. It's Jason Haskell Homes, and now I think it's Updwell Homes. But Guy Haskell was his brother. He says, hey, my brother's looking for a superintendent. You got to go talk to him. So I remember when it was time, I put on a Hawaii shirt and some khaki shorts, and I went to his office and sat down and met with this guy. Super, eccentric guy, unique. He's the utmost. I love this man to this day. Guy Haskell is a great person. And but I walk in, and it was far from what I expected as a builder. This guy is truly the nerd, right? He has got a balding top, and he's got some hair he's trying really hard to keep. He's got his blue Dockers on and a button-up shirt, and just the epitome of nerd. Not quite pocket protector, but just tickling it, right? Bless your heart, guy, right? just say it. Anyway, I got in there. I'm like, who is this guy? This is not the Danny Cheney builder that I know, right? This is a nerd building houses, and kind of didn't know what to think. We sit down and visit. He's telling me his time frames on these houses. He does starter homes. I said, hey, that's ridiculous. He goes, have you ever built a house before? I said, no, I haven't ever built a house before, but I've built sheds before, which is basically a house. They get, some of them had footings and foundations and framing and insulation and electrical and plumbing and drywall and roofing and a house, right? We'll just say everything that it takes to do a house. And we would do them in a day or 2 days with drywall. Like, we came in and we blew them out and we left. And of course, you'd have to wait the mud to dry to paint it. But on the inside, we could still finish the outside and everything except for some finish and paint in just short time. So when they were telling me they were taking 120 to 150 days for 1,200 square foot houses, I thought, that's stupid. No one's trying. You guys aren't even trying. So we made a deal, and he says, well, what are your thoughts? I said, look, I think I could finish these houses in under 90 days. I think I could do them in 45 days. And we made some agreements, 60, 90 days bonus programs. Well, don't need to get into those details. We made a bet. He says, how much are you looking for? I told him $120,000 a year. Keep in mind, this is 2000-ish, right? 20 years ago. I think it's 2000. It was 2000. So he goes, excuse me? He said, this job only pays $3,000 a month, like $36,000 a year, a cell phone and some gas money. I'm like, oh, well, I didn't care. I was like, well, I'm not taking that job. I'll live in my car. And he knew. He's looking at me like, here's this weird dude that lives in his car that has flower shirts and shorts and wants $120,000 a year. He's not coming to work. So I got strategic here, and this is where I made it a deal. And I said, look, hey, I'll promise you I can finish all the houses you had. He had 57 houses at the time going under construction in a couple different neighborhoods in Bountiful, Clearfield, and Syracuse. So I came in, made a deal, said, hey, look, I'm going to do this in 90 days. I'm going to clean up all the houses that you have. I'll do the starts that you have, and the new starts that I have, I'll finish in this amount of time, and you'll give me a bonus. If I don't get it done in this 90-day window, you don't have to pay me any money. It's free. If I do it, you have to pay me all my money and some bonus for any of these bonus parameters that we created. Needless to say, I got a pretty big paycheck after 90 days. I went to leave, and he goes, hey, come back in here. He called me the next day. That's what had happened. I'd left the office. He's like, well, this job just doesn't pay that. Called me the next day. He says, I'm super intrigued. Come back in. Told him the deal. He said, okay, I'll do it. This is a 90-day $0 bet for a broke dude, right? I go to leave. He hands me a check for $500, and I said, what's that for? He goes, well, you're going to need some gas money. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I do need gas money. I have no money. So yeah, that's right. And he gave me a company little phone. Yeah, 808-8881. That's an easy phone number to remember. So I had that and got to work and just blew it out. Well, 90 days later, here I am sitting as a superintendent, made some major changes in the way he had contracts done. People were pissed. They're like, why are you doing contracts? This is because I'm a contractor. That's my job. It's in the title, like contractor. I contract people with contracts. That is it, right? So anyway, we were able to get stuff in line, burned a lot of people up. They got pissed, got them back. We did what we said. If not, we'd paid you. And the people that didn't do what they said paid us. And that's how that worked. Needless to say, there was about a year into that, I wanted to go start my own gig. And so I left Haskell Homes and still love the guy, would go back work for that guy anytime, but made the next venture into housing, which then led into, building individual houses and earthwork and all that crap, right? So I ended up buying track hose and dump trucks and excavators and you name it. Oh, so that leads us into 2007, right? So 2007, the infamous crash of the housing market and money markets and fraudulent bank loans, supposedly. Well, we were riding the coattails, fully leveraged, had a great, our business was doing great, right? Excavation was busy, houses were busy, everything was doing really, really well. And then sudden decline. Well, we'd made a strategic move to get over into commercial construction a little bit. That a slower tale. So it didn't die as fast as the residential market did. And we went with, we kept going. And one of the deals that really kind of hurt me on the earthwork side was there was an equipment company here in Salt Lake City called Wheeler Machinery, and they had a really good financial manager. His name was Chuck Reardon. And it's all cards, right? So anytime you're dealing with people, you deal with banks, you deal with account managers, it's truly just chess, right? So the best way to look at it is you're doing the best you can to leverage whoever you can to make money in your business. They're doing everything they can to leverage whoever they can to make money in their business. So it comes down to poker, right? So you're deciding, hey, we're going to bet that we're going to make money together, so we'll give you an account, and they're going to do the same. And when it comes down to it, they're going to try to minimize their risk. You're going to try to leverage as much as you can with minimizing your risk and go on. Well, how this all worked out is when we get down into the market starting to change, the economy starts to tip down, 2007 ticks away, 8, 9, 10 comes in. Commercial is really starting to stop. I have tractors I haven't used in a long time sitting in a yard. And they had what it was called an RPO, or rental purchase option. So they called up and asked me, they said, hey, look, if you're willing to do a conversion, which was meaning to take it off of a rental program, buy the tractors and put them into a long-term loan, they'd give me 0% interest, a delayed payment period. And it was really appealing because here I am. And this is a secret for everyone. Don't get hooked or don't have an emotional connection to equipment, right? So equipment for a business should never be anything more than strictly a facet of making money in whatever industry you're in. So for Ken, it's your camera, right? If you buy the most expensive camera on the planet for a really wonderful shoot, it doesn't necessarily mean you should always have that camera for every shoot. Maybe you're just doing your backyard neighbor's birthday party. Just because you love the camera doesn't mean you can afford the camera for that type of shoot. So when you're younger and you're trying to develop this business, it's easy to be connected to your truck, like we talked about earlier, or to your equipment to operate your business in. And you don't want to let it go because it feels semi-failure-esque, kind of, right? It feels like because you weren't able to make your payments, or because you are no longer needing that equipment, you either don't have the work, so you kind of feel like you fail, or you don't want to give it back or sell it because you feel like you're failing. You're shrinking, and in our heart, it feels like when you're shrinking, you're failing, which sucks, right? So we fight this deal, and Chuck Reardon and banks and everyone else, and I'm not trying to beat up Chuck Reardon. Chuck Reardon did a very good job for Wheeler, but that's their game. He was just a much better poker player. So he came in, hey, Jeremy, convert these RPOs or these tractors from rental programs to long-term notes. We'll give you these great deals. But here's the key. We had a few tractors paid off, a few dump trucks paid off, and some skid steers paid off. Those paid off pieces of equipment, I'm going to need you to leverage those paid off pieces of equipment to help offset some of the risk of this 0% interest and delayed payments. So you understand that, right? And of course, they're teasing you with this low payment, which is going to be half, or I can't remember how much it was. It was about half of what I was paying on a rental purchase option because they're kind of a compacted payment to try to get you paid off quicker or to have a higher rent rate. Well, when I saw that low rate, I jumped on it. So here I am signing over all the equipment I had that was paid off to a couple of tractors and a loader and a dozer that weren't. And they weren't even mine, actually. They were rental. And hindsight's always 20/20. And people, these are some of those poor decisions. Where did you fail? This is my fail, right? So because I couldn't let it go, because I couldn't, emotionally, I didn't want to fail and no longer have these pieces of equipment. I agreed to this. Those tractors never left the yard. Never again. Never to go back to work. So here I am now, which would have been, in hindsight, just send it back to Wheeler. Be done with it. Go past the rents. Forget about those. Just look at it as a cost of doing business for a particular job, just like a fancy camera for Ken over here. I'm going to rent a big, expensive camera. I'm going to use it. It's going to cost me $5,000 for that job. Send it home. $5,000 cost doing business, tie it to your project. Doesn't matter. You don't have to keep paying on this thing when you don't have it working. That's one of the things that it took a long time to learn. So now, again, as you go through these things and you look at these losses, yes, that led to the demise. All of a sudden, I couldn't make payments for the certain amount of time when they came due. Of course, you can't make payments, came come get it. And as soon as the payments were due and I couldn't pay you, they came and got tractors, which, you look at it as like, hey, man, you're taking these tractors away. How am I ever going to pay you if you take my shovel and my job is digging holes? Doesn't make sense, right? They don't care. They want their tractors back. They got not just the tractors they loaned on, but the tractors that were paid off. They make money on the flip. That's their business. There's nothing to be mad at over there, even though emotionally it's devastating. For business, it's devastating. It is what it is, right? So you guys, when you do your businesses, you need to be very cognizant of what you're agreeing to, how you're setting it up, what kind of risks you're willing to take personally, as an individual, as a family, as a business. Me personally, I don't personally guarantee business. I don't do it. I look at it as if we're going to join this together and we're going to do this deal, I'll use Murphy Door right now and a lumber supplier, right? You can ask my lumber suppliers, they're not guaranteed. And I would never do it. Here's why. You take your lumber, you want to sell me lumber, and I'm going to sell my lumber to Home Depot, for example. They're going to take it. They're going to bring it to my office. I'm going to cut it into the shape of a door. And now Home Depot has their wood in the shape of a door. But it's still truly, they're selling the wood. I'm selling the door. We're both taking a risk and counting on Home Depot to pay for it. So we both have the same goal, lumber supplier and myself. Sell something to Home Depot. They sell wood. I sell wood in the shape of a door. And we go. You want to have Home Depot, I'm not going to carry the risk of Home Depot, right? And we have to be honest, and when we get paid, you pay your bills on time, and you as soon as you get the money from Home Depot, you forward it back, or whoever your customers are. And you just got to have really strong integrity, make sure you do it. And there are certain things that become out of your control, like in the earthwork world, where other customers take advantage. And contracting in Utah is a filthy mess. They have pre-lien agreements. There's some really dirty contractors like Ascent Construction that just stole from I don't know how many different contractors, and Brad Knowlton's paid his price. Business is gone, and he's serving time for that, which is wonderful. But at the same time, you really can't trust everyone. So be cautious who you decide to do business with. It's okay to fire people as customers. Like, sometimes it's smart. Don't over-agree to leverage yourself or your family for the risk so the vendor of yours can benefit if you can prevent it, right? Don't agree to those things if you cannot. It's just a better way to do it. You need to make sure you perform on your agreements. I tell my guys every day, I do not care what you do what you say. If you do that, if you mess up, you finish what you said you would do to someone, come back, we'll talk about it. And if we have to make some adjustments and fix it, just do what you say, regardless of how big of a mess it puts us in. I know that sounds really blatantly ignorant. We need to do what we say. Have good employees so you can have trust in them, that the people you're giving the power to say something on behalf of the company, that we need to keep what we're doing and do what we say to our people, not just customers, but to employees to our vendors, etc. Straight down the line. Keep your word, right? That being said, watch your leverage personally, family, vendor-wise. Pick your customers wisely. Pick your vendors wisely, right? And then do what you say. And also hold your vendors to make sure they do what they say. For me, if you don't do what you say, I will bring it out to the forefront in front of whoever's there and call horse shit. Like, we said this. Did you not do what you said? Did you not say that? Yeah, I did. Okay, well, once. This is it. Once shame on you, twice shame on me. And I'm not trying to be better than anyone, but if they're going to expect me to do what I say, I also expect for them to do what they say. When it comes to cost, when it comes to timing, when it comes to delivery expectations, no communication sucks. Price changes suck, but you can't do it today. If you need a price change, you need to let us know ahead of time, just like our vendors need to let us know ahead of time, so we can really move our pieces in play. I, as a customer, do not feel bad if a vendor comes up and say, hey, we got to raise your prices 20% today. And I say, no, we're no longer doing business together. I can't do it. You can't deliver on that. I'm not going to make an agreement on something that's going to cost us money and lose as a company because it takes so long to change big retail, big box like Home Depot's prices. You want in? Fine. But you have to understand we're not giving you a price increase until our price increase is accepted from our customers. That's just the way it is. And if you can't do business that way, I'm really sorry. And we've gone through very little vendors on that piece, or on any piece for that matter. Most of our vendors that we have working with us since the beginning are still here today, unless it was their choice. But there's really not anyone, I think, that we've fired truly, or that they've fired us. I think we've really been able to keep a good relationship in the tight beginnings and the people that took risks with us early, which just goes to show how important it is to keep open dialogue between your vendors. For example, when you're signing your application, that you're not personally guaranteeing it, right? And that when you say you're going to pay something, that you do it. If you can't make a payment, then you call them when you know you can't make the payment. Call them first. Give them bad news. Call them every day if you have to. These are lessons that I learned from the past. Rather than dodge that fucking call that you know you have to give somebody some bad news, it's scary. You're like, oh God, it's freaking Ken. I owe money. He called me 4 times today. I'm going to put it on silent. Does that only hurt Ken? No. It hurts your reputation. It hurts everything that you're trying to stand up for. And then when you need Ken to work with you, do you think he's going to be willing to work with you? No, because when shit hits the fan, you don't answer the phone, you run like a scared chicken, you're an ostrich with your head in the sand. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for him. It doesn't work for you. And when you need him in the future, it will never happen. It won't. Same goes for us. If someone does that to us, we're out. We're out. These are things you learn in time, right? You learn when to get rid of that customer. You learn when to get rid of those people in your life that really cause those stresses. And truly, it's important to line yourself up for it. Well, after this demise and you got your shed business that goes down, and then the excavation business goes down, out again, bankrupted. We were doing, just to give you an idea, between housing and excavation, just about $20 million a year again, right? So pretty good business for that time. It was a good, strong company. But when you have people like Ascent that keep you for $1.6 million, and then you have Wadman Corporation that take you for several $100,000, and again, they're trying to keep their wheels on the bus too. So it's whoever, here it is, a shitting economy. Everything's going down. They're preparing themselves. And I'm not justifying it for them at all. But who's ever better at the game is who's going to have the cash in the bank when shit hits the fan. So just remember that. Be careful. Don't ever over leverage your customer. Do not let them get out too far. Like, I don't mind working with people if they're talking, but if they're not talking, it's pretty dumb to let them not talk and keep giving them more work, or not keep commitments. Like, you're going to get paid on Friday, then you don't get paid. And then you're going to get paid next Friday and you don't get paid. And they keep making commitments up until that day. And then they say, hey, good news is not only we're not paying you, but you got another job though. This is great. we'll get this other job. It's a big job for you. Get her done. Well, it didn't help anything. So not only was I not getting paid for my past work, and I'm getting in a hole, digging a hole literally with a traco, and stepping into the next big hole I'm digging further so they can keep more capital. And I was just hoping and trusting that we would get it. Here we are 5 projects deep with this company for big dollars, and they're going to find reasons like, hey, you were late, or you had to clean up fine, or all these things that general contractors can back charge you for and do. By the way, they take advantage of every opportunity they can. The only one I really had good luck with around here was Big D. Big D Construction and Inner West Construction were amazing. But the rest of them was pretty dirty. Never worked with R&O, but Wadman Corporation, some other ones were hard. I don't think they all for everyone. Obviously, they've been a successful company, but for me, it was my lack of size and timing that really hurt. So be careful when you're working that you don't over trust, right, and that you don't over leverage yourself, and that you don't not take calls for bad news for yourself, or you're not making calls to tell people bad news. It's really important. So bad news comes, down you go. Bankrupt again, right? Here watching your tractors go down the road, watching everything disappear, your pickup trucks again, everything goes. I was able to keep my house because I owed almost all the balance, right? So good news is back to work, decided to go back into the fire world again. And by the way, I was doing fire on the side, volunteer, and doing some other little fire job all along the way. I've never really truly stepped away from it for a long period of time. Decided, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to paramedics. This is 2009. So 2009 is when I started back to Weber State. When I saw in 2010 it was crap in the bed and things went away, I wanted to get a backup plan. So I signed up at Weber State University for my paramedics program in 2009 at the tail end of the construction drop. Anyway, went back to work, and went full-time fire and paramedics at Royce City. And that was really good. During school, I drove a 1991 Toyota 4Runner with a 4-cylinder that could only go about 55 miles an hour, and it leaked at least a quart a day of oil. Right, but I had no freaking money, paying for school, 3 kids, house payment was $2,300 a month, doing cement, doing tile, doing whatever it takes, help from the neighbors. I mean, that's the great thing about Morgan County, and the neighbors are there to help, and they do, and we were getting a pig from the Meekums or cows from the Meekums. Like, it was awesome, right? A lot of little people have gardens, and it just felt like people were there to just wrap themselves around you and help protect you in these shitty times, which, you know, really makes it so you want to pay it forward as you can. So I can be honest with you guys, never 1 second did I get depressed or saddened when shit hit the fan and I lost. I knew I worked every minute of my day and night trying to keep it together. There was some mistakes I made for sure, and there was some other methods that I did wrong for sure. Mistakes made, you know, leveraging when I shouldn't have, which means putting agreements or loans on tractors when stuff was already bad. 2 is I changed the method of what grew my business, and I didn't continue what really helped us grow. Even though the economy was down, rather than market and go out and try to find the work, I went back and sat in a tractor thinking I could dig myself out of the proverbial hole by manually or physically doing it with a tractor. And that was a big mistake, right? If you need work, and I'll give you an example of, like, not to get too sidetracked, keep note of where we're at. But in the construction industry, you have a lot of people that have a lot of money, and then you have some other people that just seem like they're rich as rich and they're broke as broke the next week, which is it's easy to see on the outside looking in, but it's hard to recognize you're doing it when you're there. So when you don't have any work, you're out knocking doors and you're bidding on all these jobs and you're working really hard, and then you start to award jobs, right? So now we're really, really, really getting busy. Good news, I can't bid work. I'm too busy. I'm just going to work. I can't even talk to you till June of next year. So yeah, that's how cocky we are and how busy we are. Well, all of a sudden, you're not bidding work, you're doing work, and the work starts to finish. And then you don't worry about it because you still have a lot of work and you're missing timelines and you're late because we live in Utah and it snows and it rains and it has every other weather imperfection there is on the planet, then you're all of a sudden out of work. Now all your money's gone. Now you have to bid, and then you do it again, and it turns into this everlasting wave pool of busy, dead, busy, dead, busy, dead. And what we were doing well in the very beginning was we bid as if we didn't have any work, and we grew to the work that we could build, right? And using a rental program that Wheeler offered on RPOs, which was the rental on the equipment. When we needed work, we'd bring in the equipment we needed, and then we'd send it home when we were done. Then the attachment came in, and I kept it. Mistake, right? Quit bidding, mistake. Sit in the tractor rather than work on getting more work, mistake, right? There was laborers galore. The construction industry had shit the bed. There was people everywhere that could run a tractor, and they do it for way cheaper than they were before. But instead, I felt like I'll save money by not paying the $15 an hour or whatever it was, by digging the tractor, but I'm not getting work, right? So here we are saving, think about this, $15 an hour as a laborer in a tractor. And to give you an example of a dozer, you're $20,000 a month, right? And then you have a dozer and 5 track hose and 11 dump trucks. My monthly payments are pretty heavy. You think I can do that one person at $15 an hour? Because truly, whatever it costs you to fill my seat is truly all you're worth, right? If I can get a good excavator or a good employee that's as good as me, which isn't hard to do, to sit in my seat and pay him an hourly rate, right back to the trust leverage, I can leverage him for $15 an hour, and then I can go get work on what I'm good at. He is great. More than likely, the people you hire to run and dig the tractor are better than you, regardless of what you think. If they've been doing it for any amount of time, you may think you're great. They're probably better. So just so you know. And it's worth every penny, so you can go find your other job. You need to read E-Myth Revisited. It talks about the entrepreneurial myth, like, okay, this one has a pie maker. I'm really good at making pies, so I'm going to start a pie company. The author, I don't remember his name, but his argument is if you're a pie maker, don't start a pie company, because every time shit gets bad, you're going to just go make pies rather than build a business, right? We can hire pie makers. We can hire employees to build our sheds or build our doors. But what you bring uniquely to your business is what people like about it. So focus on what you're great at, pie making, production. Be that guy, right? And then leverage the people that are good at what they do, which is the manual component that really isn't the creative and the front-facing person to the customer, right? It's easy to forget that when you're working and when you get stressed out. And then all of a sudden you're stressed and you fall out and you think, I'm going to dig that freaking thing until I'm digging myself out of this mess. I can do it. Sometimes the hole's too big. And the oxymoron here is, how do you dig yourself out of a hole? Right? Think about it. I'm going to dig myself out. What are we truly digging? Ourselves deeper. Quit digging. Let someone else dig if you have to dig, if that's your job, and go build. Go build whatever it is that you're building, and go sell whatever it is that you're great at, and go sell whatever it is that made you get to where you're at. If you're just thinking about doing something, first off, don't think. Just do it. Do it. That's what separates it, right? There's ways to finance this. So here we sit, 2010-ish. I'm in paramedic school, 91 Toyota 4Runner. My wife, her car got taken back. It was a little Charger RT. We had to go buy, we bought can't remember what year, Stratus, at 80,000 miles from the local dealership. And I needed to borrow $2,200 it was a cheap deal from the bank. Well, I get this $2,200 car, go to Golden West Credit Union, which is just down the street from my house, who I was been banking with for a long time. But I never had a loan through them, never had a credit card. Said, hey, I need a car loan. We got declined, $2,200. My wife doesn't have a car. Devastating, right? I'm like, oh no, not that I'm depressed, but I'm like, holy, what a kick in the nuts. What are my kids going to have? How are they going to get anywhere? We got the neighbor who worked at the local Bank of Morgan to give us a car loan. Had a slight grudge from Golden West. The irony is now it's like a handshake deal for $5 million. It was ironic, but it's just funny how these circles occur with banks, but that was hard. So here we are. We have to work multiple jobs. My wife is working. I'm working. I'm doing this part-time volunteer at Morgan Ambulance as much as I can, working at the fire station, doing cement, tile, framing, door-to-door sales for Quest, CenturyLink, I guess now, with some friends, trying to just put food on the table, right? And then if you think about this is 2010 or so, and there's barely paying the mortgage, barely buying food and celebrating a hot dog in your mac and cheese. And I'm being in all sincerity. I got a $157 Dodge Stratus bill, and I had a $2,311 house payment. My 4Runner was free because my neighbor gave it to me. And then I just had to figure out tuition, and I had to figure out gas and insurance. And then kids, of course, they have soccer and school. So there's, when you're making nothing and trying to put that much money together, at the end of the day, maybe $3,500. So $1,750 every 2 weeks is no small feat, right? And then you think, and you want to build a business on top of that. How do you go from 2010 to where you're working door to door and working at the fire department? By the way, when I left Royce City Fire full-time as a paramedic firefighter and I was training, I was making $15.62 an hour, with a net check after taxes and retirement and everything was $762 every 2 weeks. That's 120 hours take home. So you do that, add it up, you're talking, $1,565 basically. My house payment's $2,311. So for 240 hours a month, I'm freaking 2,000 short on the low end of even paying my bills, barring any broken ankle or leg or dentist appointment or haircut. I mean, no way. And your local firefighters, paramedics, and cops, we had a cop in here yesterday from Royce City as well. $30,000 take home. Isn't that what he said, Ken? His take home was $30,000. Take home. Come, really? Really, I get it. There's this movement for anti-cop, if that's what you're into. Totally not. I love cops. Most of them have patrol. They gave me a ticket 2 weeks ago, so I can't decide yet. But I was only doing 94 and a 65. So where he gets off thinking I was crazy, fair, well-deserved. I just said, give it to me. Bless Rock. It was Wyoming. Gave it to me. It was okay. But either way, they are working for almost nothing. It is $2,500 a month take home. Come on, right? Here we are thinking they're supposed to be our saviors and that they do anything wrong. You're treating them like they're supposed to be Gandhi or a freaking savior of some type, but then you want to kick them in the nuts and give them $1,200, $2,500 a month. That's crazy. And that's more than the fire side right now. I mean, well, and being, full transparency, I was putting $255 every paycheck into retirement. So it was really like $1,060 or something was my take home, but I put an aggressive amount into savings because I knew I never wanted to be where I was, and I'm still young, so I could work. And I thought this is the time to save because I'd never want to be here again. And it's not that it was devastating, and I can, the point where I was emotionally broken, but I just didn't like the stress my family felt and that I wasn't home a lot. So what I did do was learn the appreciation of small things. So, right now it's hard to find appreciation in being able to pay for a pair of shoes. And it's not to be, it's not trying to discredit buying shoes. It's just that back in the day when you're like, okay, I need to buy some ballet shoes for your kid's dance, it was a hurdle. These $90 things weren't part of your budget. And when you could get that accomplished, you feel really celebratory. Like, whew, I appreciate that. That was worth the hard work. And then now, it's $90 pair of shoes, and you kind of skip over these small appreciations, and it feels like you bring in hurdles to just appreciate. That's what it feels like. I mean, I don't know if that's a clear enough description, but you build yourself undue hurdles, and it's kind of hard. Anyway, so here we go, going to college, working at Royce City Fire after that as a paramedic firefighter, knowing that I can't just always have 3 jobs. Get another job at Layton City Fire as a paramedic firefighter, part-time. Like, man, I am never home. I need to start something that pays bills better than this public service, which I love still to this day. But where does the money come from? There's a few different ways, right? So you figure you can use a credit card, which post-bankruptcy, how many credit cards do we have? Oh yeah, there isn't any, right? And then what kind of bank is going to loan us money? Probably not any. So we can use friends, we can use family, we can use fools, we can use conventional lending, which is a banker. We can use credit card lending, which is a higher risk lending. You can use venture capital lending. You can use angel investing, which would be somebody that's not as sharky as the people on Shark Tank, but come in and are willing to work with you and have some type of format to value. You know, or you can use consumer-based financed projects where you sell someone something, they pay you up front in some format and set it, kind of like I talked about with the sheds earlier. Well, first, I didn't know what I wanted to build, right? Second, I didn't know how I was going to afford to start anything. So I have a partner here at Murphy Door. His name is John Porter. He's with Focus Services Group. It's a call center. He was my stake president in my neighborhood stake up in Morgan, Utah. And I was working with him at the CenturyLink side of Focus and doing some door-to-door sales. He pulled me aside and I remember walking around the parking lot with him, and he just said, hey, I think you need to get back into that retail big box world. And if I had a little bit of money that I put into you, what would you do with it? And I'm like, I don't know. I haven't even thought about it. Because I wanted you to think of a project that you think would sell really well in big box, because I believe that's something you could pull off. I'm like, all right. So he told me a number at the time. It was $60,000 that he'd be willing to invest if I could figure out something. I'm like, whoa, all right. So on to the mission. Well, I was finishing my basement at the house. By the way, it only took 10 years because it's hard when you don't have any money to finish a basement that's 1,500 square feet. So my whole house is like 1,570 up and then 1,570 basement, or 1,550 in the basement. And it was all framed when we initially built it, but I still had to do some wiring and some plumbing and some electrical, and some drywall and insulation. So we were just piecemealing this thing over a 10-year plan, I guess. And wanted to do a theater room, and I wanted to do this hidden door deal. And in the door-to-door world, I'd met a guy, and I don't even remember his name anymore, but it doesn't matter. He'd had this bifolding bookcase concept. It was fine, but it was more like a one-piece custom bookcase system that he didn't really have a systematic hardware kit. And I looked at it, I thought, well, that's something. And he told me it was his patents and his design. As we dug further, it happened to not be. So we kind of went through and said, hey, well, look, this isn't even his. So those communications stopped. And we took the concept of the hidden door and turned it on its head and said, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to redesign this bifold concept, because this one he's got is terrible. It was really mechanical and it was really different, right? So we made it into something a little bit prettier and a little bit better, and we made it really work. And we ended up patenting that hardware set. By the way, so John Porter, I showed him this bookcase. I can't get too far ahead of myself. Said, hey, this is what I'm thinking. He looked at me like everybody else, said, that seems really, really stupid. Like, I don't know how you're supposed to get a custom bookcase inside of a retail store. But okay. It doesn't make sense to me. And our concept initially was to build hinges, because I thought, well, I could still do fire. I'm going to do hardware sets, and I could have some other subcontractor build the hardware sets and then ship it out on my behalf. I don't even have to have a location. It's going to be great. So we went in, I did some research. I paid a few $1,000s to a local patent attorney, and he did some paperwork for me. We got some patent stuff filed. We sat down with John and we valued the company. And here's how we did it. Blue sky valuations are always hard, right? You're like, how much is this business worth? By the way, every single person I've ever met, whoever's idea it is, when they come to visit with you, it's $1 million idea, right? It always is, as it should be. So the fact of the matter, and I hate to burst any bubbles, it's not $1 million idea. It may be on a long play, but just because you have an idea doesn't make it $1 million idea until there's some action, right? So you can have an idea and you can say it's worth $1 million. And I'm not going to argue the fact that it isn't. I'm arguing the fact that it isn't today. Unless you start taking steps towards making it an actual functional or whatever your idea is. It can be SaaS, it can be software, it can be whatever. But if it's going to be an just because you have an idea for an doesn't mean there hasn't been 1,000 other people with that same idea for that It's just no one's taking the action to make the right? So maybe $1 million idea, not arguing. I am arguing the fact on how our valuations work. Now, we all feel shorted when somebody says, no, that's not $1 million idea. It's maybe not worth, 10 grand, because there's so much money that needs to be invested to get it out to where it is $1 million idea. So how we did it is we came up with a concept of valuation. And we said, okay, hey, initially, let's say that this partnership or this of this door company is going to be worth $100,000 right now. And where we got the $100,000 is the initial piece from my attorney had gone through, if I recall, didn't charge me much. We said, hey, there's some green light here. And then we had some basic ideas on what the hardware is going to look like. Didn't have an engineer yet. So we said, okay, let's just use a random number of 100,000. It's easy math. Every 1,000 you put in, you buy 1%, right? This is where it gets sticky for people. Like, how do I divvy equity? How do I do all this stuff? And that's another conversation. But to get you into the bankruptcy and out of the bankruptcy ideas is we took it out and we broke it out into percentages. John's total input in the initial investment rounds was to do displays for a hardware show, patents for the hardware, and some packaging concepts. And he put in $24,000. And for that, he got up to 24%. That wasn't the end of his rounds, but it was at some point changing the valuation. So I didn't have money, but I had time. He had money, but no time. So we partnered in the aspect of, I will use your money, you will use my time, we will build this business. I feel like it's fair, it's $1,000. My earnings on my time is worth this much money per hour at this time. Every hour, every time I make $1,000, I get a percent out of this 1,000 or this million, whatever, $100,000 pool. I can pull 1% of the company down. Every time I earn $1,000, I report my hours transparently to partners, John, and we say, here's my earnings, here's your input, this is how much is there, and this is how much is left. Works out fine, and it worked out great. And it's easy when you have a partner like John Porter, who is as honest as any person I've ever met. Hard to argue with sometimes, forgetful sometimes, but there's no question on trust. And I feel like he feels the same about me. I wouldn't short him. We've made funny bets, and I've paid my bills and he's paid his bets. So nonetheless, that is how we started. And this Murphy Door concept started in December of 2012. So we were obviously I was about almost 3 years deep into, well, I guess it was just 2 full years into fire at full time at Roy, and thinking, I can't do this. I can't be this broke this long. This is getting really, really hard. And so we started this deal. Now, obviously, 2012 didn't make much money. 2013, $30,000 is what we did. Well, guess what? That was almost double or more than double than I made at the fire station. And Curtis Leishman, who's the vice president of Murphy Door right now, he worked at Riverdale Fire. So he and I worked together at Quest, CenturyLink, Focus stuff. And he stepped in and he didn't make any money either. So we did this thing together, and then he vested his time. We end up getting some equity over. He ends up getting paid. And finally we get to the point where we start making money. The next year went from like 30 to 150 and then to $1 million and then to 3. And then it just kind of progressively grows, really rapid. But in the meantime, here we sat, no money, barely making bills. Let's be honest. It wasn't making bills. That's why I had a bad credit report, not just bankruptcy, but I couldn't even pay my bills on time. And even my own bank didn't want to loan me on a Stratus, right? But at the same time, keeping your head in the game and not being down on yourself to where you're depressed because you feel like a failure, when getting up that counts as a win in my book when things are hard. Waking up in the morning is a win. So I just took it in the morning and I went to work every day, and I just didn't feel sorry for myself. And America is a real vision to me. You really can do whatever it is that you want. You look here and you say, hey, look, here it is, 18-year-old kid, come up with a shed concept, end up in Home Depot. We do a freaking boatload of sheds, get ridiculous with my money, not really smart, parties like a stupid teenager, like you should, or early 20s kid. I guess not like you should, but like I did, I want to, you heard me, kids. That's not like I said like you should. Anyway.
To all the kids that are listening to this.
To all the kids, that was a Freudian slip or something. I was not meant to be there. Anyway, you party, you end up making $1 million. You buy and drive whatever you want, several million, and then you lose. And the next thing you know, you're in your car. You're like, hey, here's what I'm going to do. And that starts with building confidence back up and having faith in what you believe in and having faith in yourself and having faith in others, right? I'm going to go out and I'm going to build houses. And Mr. Haskell, I know you only pay 30 grand a year, but I'm worth 120, and I'm willing to do my work for free to prove to you that I can deliver it, right? So again, my investment was betting 90 days of my life that I could do what I said. Believe me, I wasn't making any less money. I mean, living in my car, delivering trailers there was no money there, but I could still do it. So I knew I could keep my word. I knew I could deliver on my projects. So my next bet was into myself, willing to throw in 90 days to invest in Haskell Homes. And I got my money back. And not only that, I got a good reputation from Guy, and I was able to build up something that we were doing really good at housing. And then I started my own housing side and then got into excavation, and it all was small steps. Knowing when to trigger, knowing when to save, knowing how to market, of course, all helps. But there was no cash injection on either of those two. I guess with Burton's, there was an attempt and it failed. But here comes Murphy Door. We had a $24,000 in, and here we were rolling, right? The next one, I believe he got all in at some point for about, I think, $74,000. We ended up paying him back $50 right away because he was gone on a Mormon mission into Cincinnati, and his CFO pulled money back out as we got our first payments from vendors. It came back out, which dropped it. And we ended up getting our equity bought back down to a 5% equity stake for John, in which he later had bought back in another 5%. So John Porter's a 10% equity stakeholder in Murphy Door, and he's been a wonderful partner. But again, this wasn't having to go to private equity or venture capital or give away the whole farm. We still are able to perform and do what we wanted to say, and we're privately held, and now we're well into heavy 8 figures. Between Murphy Door and now Murphy Ladder, they are doing great, and it's pretty well. Doors have been doing way better than ladders, of course, but ladders are new. They're a year and they're pretty well known, but they have some legs to go, and we're excited about it. But when you get down and you think, how do I get out of this? The first way to get out of, and the first thing you have to get out of, is your own head, right? You have to look at the world in a bigger view. It isn't you, it isn't the world holding you back. It is you that holds you back. It is just you. And we can find every excuse in the world, and we can point every finger at the world. It was Brad Knowlton at Ascend. It was Mark Burton at whatever, right? Fact of the matter is, you made bad choices. I made bad choices in partners. I made bad choices in customers. And the failure wasn't their fault. It was my fault in choice. But I don't need to let them keep me down because they win, right? So at the end of the day, you get out of the blaming others for your mistakes. Get out of blaming others for whatever the world gave to them or to you back. We don't know what led to that over there. So the only way to move forward is to let it go. Back to the rearview mirror deal, right? It's a little teeny piece of our big, huge windshield. Reference it, move on. Look out the windshield, set your goals high. Don't limit yourself. You put sky to the limit to you. Don't listen to other people when they say, hey, you're stupid, that's crazy, that's never going to work. They may have some points. Maybe it is a little crazy, and maybe some parts of it ain't going to work. But I believe most people have an idea that, generally speaking, would work. It may not be to the scale that they may believe it is, but if you have an idea that you feel like would be good for others, more than likely it is. The question is what is the size of the scale of that for the people that it's good for? And is it a viable business on a standalone basis? But it's really hard to have clear concept of thought if you are holding grudges and not being able to get out of your own head, not able to look forward on what you can do. You really can do whatever it is you want to set out to be. You know, I read an adage the other day that said 9 to 5 pays the bills, 5 to 9 the next morning is building your empire, right? So you can pay the bills on 9 to 5, and you hear a lot of the employees around, and even our own at times, they just want 40 hours, but they want to know how to make more money. Well, we have a bonus program that's pretty lucrative. We give 10% of our net profits back to our employees, and we're proud to do it. But if you want to make more money, then more time. It's a pretty simple deal. I mean, there's nothing lucky about getting paid by the hour and needing more money and even for us as an owner. I mean, Elon Musk said it best, like, if you want to build a company 3 times faster, work 3 times longer. There's no secret recipe to make a 10-year company size in 3 years. You can do it in 3, work 3 times more. Pretty easy, right? It's not a hard recipe. Is it hard to do? Sure it is. Is it something that I think everybody can do? You're damn right it is. Just don't be a puss. You know, there's nothing on TV worth that much to watch. There's kids that are important. There's wives that are important. Balance is important. But if you're feeling like you're short, more than likely it's you're shorting your efforts into what your desires are, right? And it's not just in your return in your family. It's not just return in your business or return for yourself. Wherever that short is a lack of investment in it, right? Meaning time, really. It's a time investment strategy. There's money that needs to go into this as well. But you have to do it. You have to put your time in, and you have to put sometimes money in, but you don't get it without time. And you see people that are over here feeling jealous or anxious or whatever, and they feel like the world's unfair because you've done this. Well, unfortunately, you don't get to see the backside of what it looks like to try to, what people would perceive to be successful. To me, I love there's no failure, just lessons, right? I don't think you can fail in business unless you try, obviously, right? And if you don't try, I think that's a bigger failure than trying and not getting it as successful as what the world perceives it to be. But if you take it in a different look and you say, hey, look, I tried. So that's win number 1. And then I didn't have it end up like what I thought it should. I didn't end up a millionaire. And my neighbors, I don't have a Ferrari or I don't have a big house. But let's say you close your business down 2 years later and you'd leave there with nothing more than your dirty hands, holes in your jeans, and shoes that have holes in the bottom, right? And you walk out and say, look, that sucked. I didn't get anything that I wanted. Well, that's not true. You ended up just learning 2 years of wonderful lessons that have now just leveraged a 2-year shortcut to your next venture, right? So you're going to take away everything that you learned in those 2 years, and hopefully you learned a lot, and then you go to apply it to your next whatever it is, and don't let that first loss keep you down. Just get your hat on and shoes on and go do it again. Who gives 2 shits? Everybody's going to judge you for your first loss anyway. And they're going to like, oh, he's going to fail again. And you're like, you know what? If I don't fail, then I'm not trying hard enough then, right? Muscles don't build without breaking them down. People don't build without breaking them down. Businesses are hard to build without breaking them down and finding fail points. Fail fast and fail frequently. Every day. Celebrate those failures. Celebrate the opportunity for fracture. and figure out what's causing it. Because truly, that's the win. For me, the money doesn't, truly, I don't care. But what I find the win is able to put the pieces together and do the next step. That's my fun. That's my drive is what's hard. Well, there's no way you're going to launch a ladder in 8 months in a national chain. Watch. From zero to national chain, done, right? 8 months. Can it happen? Sure it can. Is it easy? Fuck, it ain't easy. And nothing's easy. You have to have great people around you. You have to have a wife and kids that believe in you. And if they don't, you're probably not doing a great job selling it, right? My wife didn't believe in me all the time, so I tried to sell that some more, and it worked a little. But you really have to get just down and dirty, and just doing it in 8 hours will not get you there. It will not get you there. Can't, right? We're paying our bills in 40 hours. Everybody's broke after 40 hours, right? We count on our 40-hour paycheck. All our budgets are billed on a 40-hour paycheck. At the end of the pay period or the pay month, whenever you're on, usually we don't have much left. Hopefully we saved a little bit, but you're not building anything. 10 hours, 12 hours a day, now you're adding 50% to your workday. That's all margin, right? And you're able to build from that point. Is it healthy? It can be. It depends on where you're at. Depends on where you're at home, where you're at work, where you're at mentally. Can you handle the extra hours? It's a hard scale, right? So the next step out of bankruptcy, it feels like you're super nervous, right? And fire was like this emergency blanket that always pays me, gives me benefits, and I can get it done no matter what. Like it's got a retirement plan. It's got a little one, by the way, and thanks to Dan. And it's got a little paycheck, and it's got this. It's nothing wrong with it, but it was like this ultra thin emergency blanket that you buy at the sports store that comes in this little packet. Is it enough to be comfortable? No, but it's enough to keep you from dying, right? Which isn't fair, but that's where it was. And so I had a hard time letting it go because I've already been in this broke world of bankrupt and shame and embarrassment. It was hard to get out of fire. So all the full-time fire department, I worked there until June of 2016. And it was that was a hard choice. I was super scared. Would I recommend that? Absolutely. And here's why. In the endeavors of starting, there's these cyclical waves we talked about. And what pushes you to bankruptcy typically is when you're trying to build your whatever it is, you sometimes have slow points, right? Well, unfortunately, our daily expenses don't have slow points. They get paid every month. Water bill, sewer, house, heat, you name it, dance. Those are always due. What leads you to failure typically is when you put all that in, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't give it your all, but if you still need to have a balance of where there's a release or a pressure release to make sure that you're safe. So I kept my fire world in to make sure that I got my business to a point where I wasn't 1 times better, but I had to make sure that I was 3 times more financially stable than with just fire, right? So I said, okay, if I make 3 times the amount of money that I do at the fire department, that if I lost 1/3 or 1/2 of my workflow, I would still be safe, right? That's how I went about it. I thought, well, this is what I want. So, and this comes out of the roots of bankruptcy. Like, I don't want to be here again. I don't want to have my family at risk. They need to eat. They need to be fed. So that's how I did it. Now, whether it be the right way or wrong way, I felt like if I did 3 times my annual salary, that was my line. So it wasn't a whole lot, but I had a deal. And my number, by the way, was $5 million. When Murphy Door does $5 million, I leave Royce City Fire. So fortunately, by June 2016, we'd achieved our goals, and which is, by the way, a little bit more when it comes to personal income. It's not, but that was a gross target that I'd set for Murphy Door before I left fire. And truly, I think the key if anybody's going to say, what's your key? You go break bankruptcy twice is really embarrassing, right? But I can tell you the lessons I've learned. And when I look at other people that go through the same struggle, and I had an individual, and I'm not going to use names, it called me one night, and I told you the story yesterday. He was a banker. I had applied early on with Murphy Door to get a line of credit, declined me because of my history. I had a bankruptcy within a 10-year period. So they said no, and he said he just doesn't want to do business with people that have filed bankruptcy, which I totally understand, right? If you don't understand the circumstance and then you read somebody's credit report and it says a bankruptcy on there, you're really not as inclined to want to do business with somebody that taps out, right? That's what it feels like, is a tap out. So I appreciated it. Well, we ended up talking for a while. We walk around this parking lot, and I know this guy from Adam. And I explained to him the story, and I said, hey, look, I got from here, and I was really suicidal the first time, and this was it. And I understand what it looks like with bankruptcies, but it's not always that way. So anyway, we moved on and say la vie, and about 2 years go by. My phone rings 11:30 at night. Some phone number, I don't know. Like, hello? And it was this dude saying he's sitting in his house with a barrel in his mouth, and he doesn't know how he's going to live because he's gone bankrupt. This guy's worth over $100 million at some point, right? Like, come on, man. Like, seriously, over money? You're going to do this? We've been here. I was a kid, thank goodness. I says, but here's the deal. You've made more money than most of us will ever see in our life. So you know how to do it, right? He's like, I'm embarrassed, everybody I know, and I got hosed, and he was blaming everyone else on the planet, which maybe there is a lot to blame over there, but we still have to sit back and say, yeah, we have some of it, right? And we ended up talking on the phone for about an hour. He's like, how did you do it? How did you just not kill yourself? How come you're not so ashamed of it? I says, because I tried, and I know, as bad as it sounds, I don't have money buried in a mountain. I know I didn't have any malicious action in going bankrupt. Like, I didn't take money from my business and stick it in some hole or buy a plane or snort it up with cocaine. I never did it. I never took money personally from it. So I guess the emotional guilt wasn't existent in those regards. It was more the failure thing. So I told him, I said, look, if you feel okay and you didn't steal the money from your business, then there's situations in business, even Enron went bankrupt. Like, you name it, Sears, bankrupt, Kmart, bankrupt. Like, these guys, huge multi-billion-dollar industries go broke. And it's just, what did Jeff Bezos say? That even Amazon will go broke someday, right? It's just the nature of business. Excuse me. Not saying it can't be prevented, but I just tried to walk him off the cliff. I says, they can take your flour, they can take your sugar, they can take your baking powder, they can take salt, they can take all your ingredients to make your award-winning cookies, which is millions of dollars, right? That you've done. But the one thing they can't take is the recipe, which is what you own. So regardless of what people feel like they're taking away in the action of bankruptcy, the things that you've learned and how you do it is what they want the most, because that's what's going to pay them the most, right? But they can't get it. So the last thing you should ever do is contemplate hurting yourself. Suicide hurts not just your potential, but everyone else around you, your family and everyone. And I've seen plenty of it in my life, more than I ever thought I'd ever see it on ambulances. It's not anything that I feel like is solving anything. But for this guy, the next 3 days he called, and he was walking through the process of how he's going to justify all this to his wife and his kids and his friends and his family. And I'm like, first off, if you're having to justify this to your friends or your wife, they're not your friends. Question your wife, and your family won't care. As long as you didn't steal or shame anybody, right? That's the bottom line. Well, this was probably 2019 early, and now he's back to millions. So he got his shit together, got over the disappointment of being a perceived failure to others in the outside world, and back at it, full throttle, full confidence, and going. Every time I talk to him, he's on cloud nine. He feels like that was the best thing that happened to him ever. He'd learn the appreciation of money. He learned the appreciation of his recipe of how do you do this, right? How do you make money? There's a skill set to it that doesn't come from books. It just doesn't. You need some experience. And when you don't have experience, you need mentors. You have to have solid mentors in your life. If you don't have a freaking mentor or an advisor of someone you can lean on, and you feel like just your knowledge from school will get you there, it may, but it's going to be a long road. And it's hard to see what you don't know. So if you can't figure out a way to get a mentor or an advisor, then you're going to suffer through experiences that are unneeded. I would look to people you look up to, look to people that you find successful, look to your dream guy, because I promise you they'll more than likely want a mentor for you, because successful people want to share. They just do. So I've never been afraid to ask for quality people on my advisory board. Some of them, you know, I've had to know, sure, whatever, right? Then at the bottom line is those aren't the right people anyway. But without the support group of mentorships or advisors or friends and partners and great employees, it's hard to do. But the bankruptcy piece should never be frowned upon by you if you were the ones that suffered it. It should be looking back and saying, look, I learned a lot and I have a lot to offer. And not only that, now my learning curve is going to be that much shorter and I'm going to freaking hit it over the fence. This is going to be a good thing. I'm going to be able to, you know, make my business what it was before I closed, almost lights off. And then next day back to where it is. Of course, it's going to take a little bit of time when it comes to cash, but your knowledge base to get you there will be there. And so leverage it and make sure that you have confidence that it's not that. Don't be ever afraid to say you've been bankrupt. When people ask, have you been bankrupt? I'm like, yeah, hell yeah. I'm not proud of it, but yeah, I'm proud of the lessons I've learned though. Because now I can promise if I got into a card game with Chuck Reardon asking about doing long-term loans on equipment that was on rental right before a recession, that card game would be a quite different card game, right? There'd be two things that would be different. One, I wouldn't sign the long-term loan. Two, I would never have put a personal guarantee on anything, right? So the dynamics of my risk portfolio would be completely different. They may not lend on it, fine. But I have yet had any lender not lend on my non-personal guarantee. So to me, bankruptcies have been nothing but a back builder for me. Again, I appreciate all you guys that come in and talk and we visit, or even on this, that want to know, how do you do it? Well, bankruptcy is a mindset. You can do it on a financial play. Don't bankrupt your mind out. Just believe in yourself. Don't bankrupt your personal confidence or desire. It's okay to be sad for a minute. Week, 2 weeks, 2 months, fine. But at some point, you need to pull your pants back up and get your socks on and go do it again. Just don't sit there and quit. It can start with a truck. I watched this Undercover Billionaire the other day. Stearns. I can't remember. Greg Stearns. Is that what it was? Amazing show, by the way. Loved it. He's an amazing dude. From pickup to, I think he had to do a business evaluation of a business within 90 days of $1 million. Starting with nothing but $100 and an old pickup truck, and he lived in it for a little bit. Great show. It just shows that the people that have the recipe can pull it off. He missed his target, by the way, but he still got really dang close. And I think, you know, it's a passion. It's a lifestyle. It's not for everybody. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't be for everybody. If you're not a person that could ever do it, it's okay. I'm not the best guy that wants to go do kiddie soccer coaching, right? I want to here, but here I can't do it. So just chin up and go for it. Don't, even if you haven't done it yet, just take lessons from others. And if you haven't had to bankrupt, you never do. That's great. I mean, that's even better. Just align yourself with people that have, They can tell you what not to do, or mentors and advisors that can advise you not to, or how to not get to those positions. And you can make good decisions. I hope you guys just get out there and do what it is that you want to dream about, and don't quit. Thanks for tuning in.